stated, safety and health was our first concern, and economic impact on our community. I walked Burlingame Avenue recently and visited with them. So we're not cosmetic. We are safety, in my opinion. And so could we not build a new bridge safe for our community for future generations and material? And it's very special tonight that I have privilege to this little book here that no one's going to have or see. And it is the voter register of Half Moon Bay in 1906. These are the individuals that stepped up and said, let's build a concrete bridge over that wooden bridge in the creek there. And just some names.
And somewhere along the way, something might have happened to that bridge, but you don't know. Just sure enough as we never knew when Devil's Slide was going to go out. It was unpredictable. And look at the havoc that came with that, because you didn't know when the road was going to go out, and everything stopped. People did lose business. People were out of jobs. And Lord knows we all had to go around the long way. And now we finally have a tunnel. As one of the speakers had said earlier, it took 40 years to do that. I'm going to go back just a little and just tell you what that bridge is really composed of. Now, when concrete reinforcement first started, there was a patent, a man named Ransom. He lived in San Francisco, and it was in 1884 that he received the patent. The very first bridge that was used with reinforced concrete was in 1889, and it's in Golden Gate Park. Now, one of the things he did was with a steel tube that was twisted and it was squared, and that, with squaring it, made the cement bond. And that was revolutionary 113 years ago. But as you know, time goes by, stainless steel rusts, and we can all figure out that concrete and the way it's mixed has evolved quite a bit from 100 years ago. In fact, when that bridge was built, it was only supposed to last 50 years. So I definitely think we got our money's worth of that bridge too. Because although you can build a bridge in the middle of Iraq or Afghanistan, or even the bridge up in Washington that fell in the last year, they replaced it in 6 months. That bridge wasn't on the California coastline. We have so many more requirements than any of those other bridges outside of California, and especially outside of the California coast. Was not just something we picked up to do, and it was not something that we had a pile of money sitting there and we just decided to go impact people's lives. Because as John mentioned, we live here too. We cross there. And that bridge was originally built 113 years ago for horse and buggy. I'm sure the builder never dreamed that a 3-ton Chevy truck would be driving over it daily. Thousands of them.
Thank you, Marina.
I have a follow-up quick with that while the engineer's getting ready to think. It still would not meet federal highway safety standards, though. Is that correct?
That's right.
Okay, so it still would not meet federal highway safety standards for 2 emergency vehicles crossing at one time.
That's right.
I'm not sure I understand the question. Are you suggesting that you commit to a rehabilitation scheme, then you do the testing as part of that scheme and realize that it's not feasible, it's beyond repair?
If I may, her question was that once the roadbed, if the roadbed is taken up and it's exposed, the road is closed, and at that point you discover that, I believe you're saying you discover that you can't go forward with that project, do you, and I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but are you saying then what's the process from that point? Do you have to start over, or is there a quick fix? What do you do in that contingency? Is that right, Naomi?
Yes, because
Before we proceed, we would assess these types of risks and these measures to account for what can go wrong and have a contingency plan laid out. And we would try to remove any type of a risk that would lead to a catastrophic situation that once you remove it, you're stuck and you can't repair it. So ahead of time, that might require maybe doing some testing or some other things that we would eliminate these risks. So as we go into it, we would eliminate those risks, yeah.
So we would not be at risk, because I don't want the merchants and anybody be at risk if we say we're going to do this and then we do fall into something like that.
There may be risks that once we open up the barrel, we look at it, and there would be additional repairs that would take more time for the closure. Yes, that might be one of the risks that we find out. Instead of having that roadway closed, let's say for 4 or 5 weeks, it might be 8 weeks or something. So that's one of the risks that yeah, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Alan?
In mind, let's just be very clear about 5A. There's several factors you all have to consider. We would have to do testing. We have no idea until we start the testing what the outcomes are going to be. But the opinion of 3 different engineering firms has been the bridge appears to be structurally rehabilitatable. That's what we're working off of. In the dry season, the creek
That on a couple of factors, if they're factors. One of them is safety. I will do the right thing and make a decision and hang my hat on safety every time, and so I will have questions about that. I also, but in terms of wanting to understand what is best for the economics of the community, and to validate some assumptions I had, I also reached out to an economist at Stanford, and meaning I want it to be a historic-looking bridge or an aesthetically pleasing bridge. Although, if you took a close look at it, she's not a pretty girl. Questions, and the tipping point for me is around functional obsolescence and structural deficiency, and it comes down to safety. So our first criteria of our 5 was safety. And I will tell you, in my most recent walkthrough of the bridge, I took photos and whatnot. I was reminded of in 2000, the year 2000 when I moved here, that driving across the bridge, I actually struck. I was driving south on Main Street, and actually, as you turn the curve into the bridge, I actually struck the bridge. I go, oh, how often can that happen? Well, apparently a lot, because I think there's a problem with the geometry of the bridge, which Caltrans pointed out. So with that, regarding safety, if our bridge is at 22 feet, and the reason safety is important, I'm thinking safety in terms of bridge traffic, pedestrian traffic, bicycle traffic, and all sharing that whole structure at one time. What is a safe width? What makes it a safe width? I believe it can be repaired, but can the safety issues be addressed? And that again for me is the pivot point, because I know it can be repaired with high confidence. At least I have high confidence that it can be repaired, and that's what the engineers told us. That's what the analysis told us, and that's what logic tells me. But can we overcome safety? around safety is, will option 5A address geometry considerations? By geometry, I mean, if you look at it from above, where a mayor allegedly struck the bridge, a choke point, and also a safety concern. Viable option. Repairing the bridge does not fix the geometry or the safety concern with width. And I'll be really frank, safety trumps all in my book. And I'll pay more for safety because that's the most important thing for anybody traveling on that bridge, on a bicycle, walking, whatever. I have the same concern up and down Highway 1 for completely inappropriate. I think it's appropriate to think of safety. I think it's appropriate to think of geometry. I think it's inappropriate to make the bridge unnecessarily big. If the funnel is this wide, then the bridge is this wide. And I don't want anything wider than that, and I won't support that. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, I'd like to just bring us back a little bit to 5A and try to be practical about this. You're going to open up a very sick individual there, you know, and I'm just very fearful that when we open that bridge up, we're going to say, oh my goodness, it's not repairable. And then what's going to happen? We've already given the money back. We're already going to be in, and we have a fiduciary responsibility to this community to ensure that our budget is balanced. And this is not going to be $1 million job. I can tell you, this is going to be $4 or $5 million job in the end. I'm just speculating. I want to be on the record for that speculation. Because those wing walls, and you bring in cranes, and you bring in jackhammers, and you bring in pile driving, it's not going to be a $100,000 project. And when you open it up, and then all of a sudden it's unrepairable, I'm just speculating, okay? But I want you to know that we are on the hook for it, this city, and I can't be on the hook for future generations for funding, number one. Number two, watched Secretary of Transportation Fox speak to the National Governors Conference, and he talked about infrastructure, and he talked about bridges, and he said the longer you delay replacing a bridge, the more it's going to cost you all. And he really stressed that to the states of America, and I really believe that. And personally, I'm a very strong supporter of option 2 at the moment.
Thank you, Rick, for all your comments. I mean, that was detailed, and I think that gave us a lot of information. And John, I'm a little wary too. You open that roadway bed, and if you see anything that's disintegrated, there is the chance the bridge is shut down right then and there. I don't think any of us are prepared for that. And we've talked a lot about the roadbed surface, but what about the supports? I mean, no matter what is done, those supports have to be fixed. Those are the things that are coming away from the side of the creek. Buttressed spandrels is the correct word as you use. So could you talk a little bit more about the repair of those spandrels and how they're eroding away from the creek?
It's right that a catastrophic failure of a earth-filled arch is pretty remote. Liquefiables and everything drops, or one side drops, then you get some significant damage. Even though you can still drive across the bridge, you know, you may only drop an inch or two, and it's a bump. But that's not catastrophic, but it's potentially, you know, starts some real deterioration. So I think everybody agreed you probably drill 4 big caissons, if you will, in each corner, straddling the existing ends of the bridge, and stress it together, and basically they support the bridge. You discount any contribution from the timber piles. That's work in the creek. That's probably the most significant work in the creek.
Thank you.
I could just add to that your question was what happens if we go with the rehab option or repair option. So the plan would be that the work within the creek will be done during dry months, the foundation, the wing walls, and then also as far as roadway repair work and taking the fill out, that will be in the winter months because that's when the bridge will be totally closed. Now that's when we could find that our spandrel walls are not properly, or their joint with the arch is getting weaker because the rebars are corroded or half gone. So that time some additional work will need to be done inside the bridge to hold the spandrel walls to the arch. So that's where the closure could be extended.
Thank you.
Resolve the safety concerns. Because I don't think any, so I take it as a given that the bridge can be restored. And just a little money, a lot of money, I believe it can be restored. But how do you resolve the safety concerns?
We currently have roughly 22-foot lanes. The hope is, after talking to some of the engineers, that the slab could be a little bit wider. We could get, say, 2 12-foot lanes, 24 feet, which to me is doable. So I think lane width will be okay. I'm still bothered by the curve. I know some people like it, thinks it slows people down. I think it's the opposite. And if we ever had a serious accident after we did, say, 5A, who do you think people would come after? They come after the city for not having fixed a deficiency, a safety deficiency we were aware of. But it's like anything else. You know, people go walking on the cliffs along the beach and they don't read the signs and they fall off the cliff. We're never going to be able to make everything 100% safety proof. I think we do the best we can. I mean, the reality is it's been there for 113 years. I don't think we've ever had a fatal accident on there. But
Run the risk of opening that road bed and we shut the bridge down. That would be the risk. So you're saying 6 to 8 weeks. Let's call it 2 to 3 months, honestly. But if there's anything wrong, it's longer. And we don't know.
Well, we don't know, and that's part of when you open it up, the discoveries of what you find inside of the bridge and what type of repair scheme is needed. So it's not known right now.
And no amount of poking holes here and there in the bridge can tell you until you remove that bridge, because depending upon where you poke the hole.
The poking of the hole would raise our level of confidence, but not eliminate all the risks.
Doesn't eliminate the risks.
Poking the holes is a legitimate approach. But you're right, then sometimes you don't want to look at you don't want to know what you might find. But keep it.
And I take it as a given that the bridge can be repaired and restored, but unless there's something that says that it can be made safe, functionally acceptable, that's really a deal breaker for me. And when I compare the difference I see between the two is that when you're done, it looks pretty similar. Above grade, it's going to have our historic look, but it's going to meet safety standards. But if it doesn't meet safety standards, I pretty much come down to, If we're going to fix it, we're going to do it right, and it's going to meet safety standards, and that's where I'm going to be. Or wait another year. Frankly, I don't want to fix it wrong. I don't want to fix it and spend $1 million and not have a safe structure.
I'm at the point of, I will make a motion for item number 5 at this time.
I need a question answered on number 5, because I had the same opinion that I liked option 2 and 5. The only thing with 5 that I did not like was that the road was so wide. So is there a possible way that, because I thought the road was pretty wide.
Just 1 second. 5 is similar to 5A in that it rehabs the existing arch and adds a new arch, is 5. So basically, but 5 has that same potential pitfall in that you're trying to rehab the old arch. Once you pull the roadbed off, you discover there's something wrong. I guess you might have to put in a whole new arch if that's what it came down to. So 5 puts in a brand new arch to the west, opens 2 lanes up, never shuts down Main Street, and then the next year you come along and you rehab the old arch, and you end up with a very wide bridge because you've got 2 arches underneath there.
Yeah.
The one thing,
eliminates parking.
the one thing I did hear, I don't know if it came out clearly, was the engineers are saying that possibly with option 3, they might be able to accomplish this in 1 dry season, and I'm not sure if that came out tonight.
So that didn't, but if I want to follow up on this 2 versus 5 discussion, so that I know of a motion with no second.
I'm open to more discussion on 3.
Thank you. There was no second. So and the trigger point for me is safety and the geometry of the bridge. If safety were addressed, I would support that, but it's not.
Call for the question.
A motion and a second, and may I comment, John? So I'll present it to the council this question, and Alan made a fine point on, and the engineers did as well. We add the concept of temporary bridge, and the reason why I like temporary vehicle bridge is because at the end of the day, when we're done, I want the bridge to fit the existing roadway. I don't want it to be any bigger, and I believe option 3 makes it bigger. Correct. So the only place I get hung up, I support this motion. The only place I get hung up is making sure it is in fact the most advantageous in terms of speed, and I believe that it is based on everything that I've been hearing. But if it's not, I'd like the engineer to say it's not.
I think 2 is probably still the fastest, but maybe not as fast as it's indicated in the chart.
Got it. Thank you very much. And with that,
and before you call for the question, I'd like to request or suggest that you approve the resolution as I'm about to describe it being modified. First, to delete the last 2 whereas clauses, and secondly, under the now therefore be it resolved, that staff is hereby directed to initiate environmental review, regulatory permitting and design processes, including review under CEQA and the City of Half Moon Bay zoning code, and the City of Half Moon Bay LCP, LUP of the project described in option 2 with the features that Marina described, temporary pedestrian walkways and vehicle crossing, and restricting work at night to protect restaurants and hotels
So it's stated.
and residents.
Naomi?
The question to the motion is, if indeed you are still going to keep in the temporary bridge and the crosswalk, it's still, so the time will be a little bit longer. But is that okay? If fastest, okay. Yeah, I want the fastest.
So I have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
No.
Yes.
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 Yes. But with that, I want to make the comment that I appreciate the massive amount of work that went into this from our staff and from the community and from specific members of our community that spent real time and effort on this. And I hope everybody appreciates the pivotal factor of safety. Thank you. And with that, we'll move on to the last item of the evening,